Priya is 27. She makes six figures in tech, and her money just sits in a savings account. Marcus is 34, doing well, but almost all his net worth is stock in his own company. David is 41, a high earner, but he's got 3 mortgage properties and no cash to speak of. Diane is 52. She pulled everything out of the market back in 2022 and never went back in. On paper, all 4 look fine. Good jobs, good income, no red flags. But every one of them got risk wrong in the exact same way. It just looks different depending on who you're talking about. None of these 4 people are careless. They are not bad with money. Priya saves. Marcos built something real. David worked hard for those properties. Diane made a call that felt smart at the time. That's what makes this so easy to miss. Here's the trap. Most people don't actually know what risk is, so they do one of 2 things. They run from it, or they ignore it completely. And both roads end up costing the exact same thing. By the end of this video, you'll probably spot your own version of this. Maybe it looks like a savings account. Maybe it looks like a house. Either way, it's there. Section 1. Priya came up in a strange time. She watched layoffs hit the news over and over. She grew up hearing about her parents losing money back in 2008, watching their accounts shrink and their plans fall apart. That stuck with her. So when she started making real money, she did the thing that felt safe. She saved it. She didn't touch it. No stocks, no risk, no chance of watching it disappear like her parents did. To her, that felt like being smart, like being the grown-up in the room. Everyone around her seemed to agree. Nobody ever pulled her aside and told her the truth. Cash doesn't feel risky. It sits there. It doesn't drop in value overnight. And it doesn't make headlines. But sitting still isn't the same as being safe. While her money stayed exactly where it was, prices kept moving. Rent went up. Groceries went up. The cost of everything around her kept climbing, year after year. So even though her balance never dropped, what that balance could actually buy kept shrinking. That's the part nobody explained to her. Avoiding one kind of risk doesn't mean you're free of risk. It just means you picked a different one. A quieter one. The kind that doesn't show up until years later, when you look at what your money can't do anymore. Priya didn't do anything reckless. She didn't gamble. She didn't chase some hot stock tip. She did the responsible thing. The thing she was taught to do. And that's exactly why this trap is so easy to fall into. It doesn't look like a mistake while it's happening. It looks like good sense. Section 2. Let's look at real numbers. Say Priya had $100,000 sitting in that savings account, earning about 0.5% a year. That's close to nothing. After 5 years, her balance grows to a little over $102,000. On paper, that looks fine. She didn't lose money. But here's the part that matters. Prices didn't stay still while her money did. Over that same 5 years, the cost of everyday life went up around 20%. Rent, food, gas, all of it. So when you check what her $102,000 can actually buy 5 years later, it's worth closer to $84,000 in real terms. She didn't lose money on paper, she lost almost $16,000 in what her money could actually do for her. Now compare that to a boring safe index fund. Nothing fancy. Just an average return of about 7% a year, which is normal for a long stretch in the market. That same $100,000 grows to around $140,000 after 5 years. Adjust that for the same inflation, and it's still worth about $115,000 in today's dollars. So line them up. Priya's cash, worth about $84,000 in real terms. The invested version, worth about $115,000. That's a gap of roughly $31,000, just from picking one option over the other. Same starting amount, same 5 years, same person. She didn't spend that money. Nobody stole it. It just quietly disappeared into rising prices while she thought she was playing it safe. That's the part that doesn't show up on a bank statement. The number stayed the same, the value didn't. Section 3. Marcus has a different story, but the same problem underneath. He works at a company he actually believes in. Good product, good team, stock that kept climbing year after year. So every time he got options, he exercised them. Every time the company offered more, he held on. It felt less like a financial choice and more like loyalty. Nobody at work told him to slow down. Why would they? A rising stock price is good news for everyone in the room. His net worth grew right alongside it, and it felt like proof he was doing something right. Here's what that looked like a few years in. Around 70% of his net worth sat in that one stock, not spread across the market, not spread across other companies. Just one, tied to one product, one industry, one set of decisions made by people he didn't control. Then one bad quarter hit. Earnings missed. The stock dropped 40% in a single week. Say his net worth going in was $500,000, with $350,000 of that sitting in company stock. That one bad quarter wiped out $140,000. Gone. In a matter of days, from something that never even felt like a bet. Priya thought avoiding risk meant safety. Marcus thought loyalty meant safety. Neither one saw it as risk because it never felt like gambling. It felt like belief. It felt like sticking with something good. That's the trap. Risk doesn't always show up looking dangerous. Sometimes it shows up looking like confidence in something you're close to, something familiar, something you'd never think to question. Marcus didn't do anything reckless either. He just stopped seeing the one thing that could have protected him, spreading it out. Section 4. David did everything people say you're supposed to do. He bought property. Not one, but 3. Everyone around him said the same thing. Real estate always goes up. You can't lose with property. It's not like the stock market. So he leveraged up, took out mortgage after mortgage, and used the rent from each property to help cover the next one. It felt smart. It felt safer than stocks, because you could touch it. You could drive by it. It wasn't just a number on a screen that could vanish overnight. Property felt solid in a way that stock never did. But here's what leverage actually means. It means the bank owns a big piece of every one of those houses, and you're the one making the payment every single month, whether things go well or not. Then 2 tenants miss rent in the same month. Maybe one lost a job. Maybe one just decided not to pay on time. Doesn't matter why. Now David needs to cover 3 mortgages, and 2 of them just lost their income overnight. His job pays well, but not well enough to absorb 3 mortgage payments on top of his own bills. Say those 2 mortgages run $2,400 a month combined. That's $2,400 he now has to pull from somewhere else, every single month, for as long as those units sit empty. He's not broke. He's not in trouble on paper. His net worth still looks strong if you check his property's value. But right now, this month, he's stretched thin trying to cover payments on assets that were supposed to make him money, not cost him sleep. This is the one that probably feels the closest to home. A lot of people talk about property the same way David did. Tangible, safe, can't lose. But leverage doesn't care how solid something feels. It just cares whether the payment gets made. And David just found out what happens when it doesn't. Section 5. These 4 people aren't some rare unlucky bunch. The numbers say this is normal. Start with David's problem. According to a 2025 Federal Reserve survey, 37% of adults couldn't cover a $400 emergency using cash or something close to it. That's not people without jobs. That's more than a third of working adults, one flat tire away from trouble, even while looking fine on paper. Now Marcus's problem. Research on retirement accounts found that around 11 million people had more than 20% of their retirement savings sitting in their own employer's stock. And in a study on how workers understand that risk, only 16% of employees actually knew that owning their own company's stock is riskier than just owning a normal stock fund. Most people who do exactly what Marcus did don't even know they are doing something risky. And then there's Priya. Data from Empower, a major financial firm, shows that people in their 20s keep close to 39% of their money in cash. That's a bigger share than almost any other age group, older retirees aside. It's not a handful of overly careful savers. It's the standard move for an entire generation just starting to earn real money. 4 people, 4 totally different mistakes. Same root cause running underneath all of them. Nobody sat any of them down and explained what risk actually is. So they either avoided it completely, like Priya, or they stopped noticing it was even there, like Marcus and David. And the data says most people you know are doing one or the other right now. Section 6. Here's the part that makes this so hard to catch. None of these choices ever feel like risk while you're making them. They feel like identity. Holding cash doesn't feel like gambling. It feels like being the responsible one. The person who didn't get caught up in some hype cycle. Holding company stock doesn't feel like a bet either. It feels like loyalty, like standing behind something you helped build. Buying property doesn't feel risky because you can see it, touch it, walk through the front door. It feels solid in a way a stock chart never will. And pulling everything out of the market after a crash doesn't feel reckless. It feels like finally learning your lesson, like getting smart after getting burned. None of these people sat down and ran the numbers. None of them weighed the odds or checked what the data actually said. They told themselves a story, and the story felt true enough that it never got questioned. That's the real trap. Risk doesn't usually show up wearing a warning label. It shows up wearing a costume that matches whatever you already believe about yourself. If you think of yourself as careful, risk shows up looking like caution. If you think of yourself as loyal, risk shows up looking like belief. If you think of yourself as someone who learned from a hard lesson, risk shows up looking like wisdom. So the question was never whether Priya, Marcus, David, and Diane were careless. They weren't. The real question is whether any of them ever stopped to check if their story matched reality. Most people never do. That's not a character flaw. It's just how the mind works when money and identity get tangled up together. Section 7. So what does the fix actually look like for each of them? Priya doesn't need to abandon cash. She needs a real number for her emergency fund, something like 3 to 6 months of expenses, and then everything sitting past that number should move into a simple diversified position. Not a hot stock, not a bet. Just a broad index fund that grows over time. Her safety net stays exactly where it is. It's only the extra sitting around doing nothing that finally goes to work. Marcus doesn't need to walk away from his company. He needs a cap. Pick a fixed number, say 10 or 15% of net worth, and treat that as the ceiling for company stock. Anything above that gets sold and spread across other investments on a regular schedule, not all at once, not based on a gut feeling about the stock price that week. Belief in the company can stay. The blind spot doesn't have to. David needs to stress test his properties before he takes on a single dollar more of debt. What happens if one unit sits empty for 2 months? What happens if 2 do? He needs to run those numbers on paper, then build a real cash buffer that can cover a few months of vacancy on all 3 properties at once. Only once that buffer exists should he even consider expanding. Diane doesn't need to guess when the market bottoms out. Nobody can time that, not reliably. She needs a plan instead of a feeling. Something like dollar cost averaging, where she puts a fixed amount back into the market on a regular schedule, month after month, regardless of what the headlines say that week. That way the decision isn't riding on her nerves. It's already been made in advance. Section 8. So which one are you? Are you the hoarder, sitting on cash because it feels like the safe move? Are you the loyalist, tied up in a company you believe in, without ever checking the number? Are you the leverager, holding property that looks solid on paper, but leaves you stretched thin the second something goes wrong? Or are you the runner, the one who got burned once and never went back? Tell me which one in the comments.